Thank you very much. So I wanted to have this talk for a while now because I started using ChatGTP since I think like the first days that it was out. I was super excited for it, and I was like, I can definitely use this for my presentations. So I very recently also changed positions. So instead of a developer, I became a developer advocate, and that meant a lot of content, and content means research. So I started using that for pretty much everything. And then I had to relocate to Italy, and Italy had different plans for me. So this entire presentation was made using ChatGTP and my beloved VPN, because Italy just banned ChatGTP before actually having this talk. And I was like, oh, I'm going to talk for a tool that I can't really use. Thankfully now it's not banned, so everything is cool. My name is Eliza Camber. I am a developer advocate at Amity. We build an SDK where you can plug it into your mobile or web applications to add white label social features. So before we move though to the presentation, how do we use it? Let's first see why ChatGPT made such an impact. So ChatGPT is an AI chatbot that uses natural language processing to create human-like conversation dialogue. The language model can respond to questions and compose various written content, including articles, social media posts, essays, code, and emails. Well, AI has been around for so long, so why did it make the impact though? So the keyword is compose. So ChatGPT is not using the AI that we knew so far, which was classification mostly, and it's using generative AI. And that was why everyone, why it's such a big buzz and why it disrupted everyone's world. So let's point the elephant in the room. Will AI actually replace us? Nope, that's not happening. What will happen though is that probably your work as you know it right now, it's not going to be acceptable, let's say, in a few years. So what will happen is that we're going to have AI generative tools that are going to help us, and that goes for research, for content, for emails, for coding, everything like this. So a disclaimer, this is not just a ChatGPT talk, but in general, a GTP, so a generative AI talk. And we will see tools that are going to use generative AI for technical and non-technical presentations. And by non-technical presentations, I don't mean sales pitch, because I am a developer. I think most of you are a developer over here. So I can't really do sales, even with the ChatGPT, but what I can do is to talk about non-technical matters. Well, it's a non-technical code that it doesn't have code, but it's still for the tech world, right? So the agenda for today is very simple. So we're going to talk how we're going to use generative AI from the idea to the abstract to the research and the slides. And if you want to follow along and you can't see it, or if you want to keep the slides for later on, this is the link. Also the QR code if you would like to scan it. I will show it again at the end of the presentation. I'll give you a minute. I see a lot of phones up. All right. So for this presentation, I'm going to actually use 3 presentations that I've built using ChatGTP and the rest of the tools. So the first one was Dare to be the next one on stage. It's a non-technical presentation, again, for developers. It was about public speaking, so from gesture to slides to everything included. And then another one, it's called To Fold or Not to Fold. I'm an Android developer, so that is about Android foldable phones and how you can use different APIs to support the foldable phones and not only. So that was a very technical presentation. And then another one that was not that technical, but sort of technical, was how to add social interactions for every application. So like we build social features. Depending on your application, what sort of social features can you add in order to make the whole experience better for your users? So everything starts from the idea for giving a talk, right? Or for having a presentation. That can be a personal struggle. That can be a problem that you identified to, like within your team or your workflow, or some APIs, or something that it just took you a ridiculously long time to figure out. It can be a bug, it can be like how to implement something, anything. So can ChatGTP and the rest of the tools help with that? Well, I found this amazing tool over here. It's called, I am not promoting any specific tools, just to be clear, just showing the ones that I am using, and there are tons of them out there, so you can just check them out and choose whatever works for you, because not everything works for everyone for sure. So our Omni is for research. So I was like, okay, so how can I use generative AI if I want to write a blog post, for instance, or if I want to go to an Android conference and give a talk over there? So I said, find me the top 10 pain points on Android Jetpack Compose on Stack Overflow. Well, that failed. But did it all go for nothing? Well, not really. Because what happened is that it will give you the links, the source links over there. And first of all, you can check out if it is indeed a pain point for a lot of people or not. Many of those that actually came back as results were not. There were just a few people out there. But I was like, oh, that can actually be like a nice blog post, for instance, or a nice Twitter, because I do know the solution to that, and I can reply to that Stack Overflow question. And then you can see that it has like all the source links over there to check them out, and then it should have provided a summary as well, which in this case, it failed. Probably if I would say like, get me the most top voted and recent ones, it would have like done a better job. But this is the problem, the current problem in brackets with the current AI, right? You really need to figure out the question. You really need to know what to answer, to question it. And that also comes when it comes to tools like Copilot, for instance. Copilot is fantastic till it's not. So the first times that I started using it, does everyone know what Copilot is? Hands? Okay, so most of the people. Copilot is an AI tool from GitHub for writing code, basically. So the first time that I used it, I tried to be like as specific as I could. The code that it came back with, I needed more time to actually get the code, to fix the code and actually build it myself. And I was like, this is a disaster. But then I started using it more and more and more often, and what it does is that it's trained, and it's training super fast. And right now, when I use it in my projects, it is actually good. So, yeah. Then we go to the abstract, right? So when you have a talk, when you have a presentation, when you have everything, first you have like, let's say that it's an internal presentation to your team. You have the idea of what you want to talk about, then you need to let them know that this presentation is happening or this talk or whatever. So either this is going to be an email or on the website of the conference, you need an abstract, right? Why should people come? And a good abstract must be short, but not too short, descriptive, but not too much, and then as engaging as possible. I was actually writing down that slide, and I was like, there is an ancient Greek song that's like, O τέλειος άντρας, ο άντρας σωστός. For those that didn't get the joke, you didn't miss much, but It's exactly like this. It's like it has to be everything all in one, and those things don't really match very well to each other. So the abstract anatomy is like the why, the what, and finally, what are people going to get out of that, right? So you have the reason, why should someone attend? You have the what are you going to cover? And then, like at the end of the session, what will I end up going home with, right? Like what's the outcome of this presentation? And that's what I said to it, like create an abstract for a talk with a title using ChatGTP for technical and non-technical presentations. And it came up with that, which was not all bad. And there were a few things that I liked. So ChatGTP, an AI language model, has the potential to improve the quality and deliver of presentations by generating coherent and relative content. I was like, okay, so from all this, those 3 lines I can actually use. I like them. So I continued reading and like, okay, to produce more effective and persuasive presentations, I like that too. So then I started like saying, okay, so why would someone care, right? Why would you care about using generative AI to do your presentations? Okay, persuasive, okay. I can do all this by myself, right? I don't need AI. I've been doing this for so long without actually having the tools. So what is the difference? The difference for me was the time-saving effect. Because all the research that I would put out for having a single presentation, I could now at least ask and use some of those tools. So it didn't help me create like better presentations, or maybe it did, I don't know, but that was not my case. My case was that it was a very much time-saving help. So my next question to it was like, okay, so why are time-saving tools so important? And then came back with that. And I was like, oh, I really like this answer. So then you just put everything together, and I ended up with what you've read in the conference website, which was a pretty good turnout, so I'm super happy with that. So then we go to the slides. So can we use, there is like the research part before the slides, but I'm actually going to go for the slides first and then the research, because the research is the most complicated part of any sort of presentation. It doesn't matter if it's on a conference or if it's an internal event or whatever. So for the slides, I'll start with this. So Tomi is one of the many tools that they are called like storytelling and slide generators, and there have been at least like 10 like this. And does it work? Well, I mean, I asked it to do a presentation for foldables, and this is what it comes out with. So it says about the benefits. Before that, it says an introduction. Then it was the benefits. Then it was understanding the basics of the Android foldable phones. Sorry, over here. So all this is good, but for me, that's just too much text in the presentation slide. So it's already a no-go. And also, it doesn't match my style. Like, if you go and you talk about the benefits, first of all, you don't write the entire text. So it would work as speaker notes, but not as slides. And also, that would be like probably the first like 2 or 3 slides for me. Okay, that's already too much. And then you ask like, does it get better if I ask for like the API specifically? So if I go a little more technical, will it understand better? Not really. It came up with basically the exact same presentation, slightly different. So over here you can say like understanding the basic of Android foldable phone APIs. But for the rest, in the majority of the presentation, it was basically the same. It was saying like, oh, the benefits are this. It might be perfect for like a pitch, but for technical presentations, it didn't work, at least for me. But all this content can be very useful for a blog post, for introduction, or even an abstract. Like some of those that I found was like, oh, damn it. I wish I had that for the abstract. That's a really good one. So then how? How do we use generative AI if we cannot use it to actually make the slides? How do we actually use it to help us out with the presentations? Well, then we go to the research. The research is the biggest part, as I said before, into a presentation, in any presentation. And then I will start with this example that I had over here. That was a social interaction for every app. So obviously you can't get every single app that's on the Google Play Store and say like, okay, so for this app you need this, and for this app you need this. You also need something that will apply to everyone, right? So what do I do? Okay, so how would you classify all mobile apps in 6 categories? And there I had all of the categories. I didn't really have to think about this. Did it make sense? It did make sense. And for some of those, like, I actually ended up with 5 of them instead of 6 because I thought that, okay, so this and this can be actually combined and I don't mind. And that actually saved me a lot of time just thinking about how am I going to do those classifications and how am I going to do this and that. It's still classification, it's not generative AI, but just the fact that I had a generative AI tool like ChatGTP that I could ask the question without having to deal with the rest of the classifications. If anyone over here had to deal with AI and ML models, they know what I talk about. That was impressive for me. So can we use it for other questions? Well, of course. I actually asked a lot of questions. So for the social interactions, I added like, how much does the retention rate improve if you add social interactions to lifestyle apps? Because I was very interested in the lifestyle apps. And actually, I didn't ask ChatGTP for that because ChatGTP doesn't give you a source. So I asked tools that actually give you the source, like the Omni that we saw before. Or what social interactions would you add to lifestyle apps? Is Uber a lifestyle app? I didn't know if Uber is like a utility app or is it a lifestyle app. Tell me 5 utility apps that use social features. And it actually came back with like Google Maps that I would have never thought to put into the utility bucket. And Google Maps really use social features with the best way possible. So for the ChatGPT, for this talk actually, so what are the best research tools that use generative AI? So you can actually use for asking more tools. Or like, what are the 3 points every good abstract should have? That was the one that you saw before. Best generative AI tools for images, because images are a big part of the presentations. And for the foldables, when was the first foldable released? I didn't have to go through all of the news articles to read them out. Explain canonical layouts on Android to a beginner. That's also something very interesting that you can actually do with the AI. How does Jetpack Compose help develop Android apps for every screen size? Or summarize this article. All of these are questions that you can ask it, and you don't really have to spend a tremendous amount of time going through Google search results. So because of how different technical and non-technical presentations are, or like the technical and non-technical parts of a presentation are, I'm going to split it in 2. So first we're going to talk about the non-technical part, which means no code. And the second one will be the actual code, like how do you use generative AI to create the code. And again, this doesn't go for all the industries. This is for tech workers. I don't know what it works for, like sales or marketing or stuff like this. So generative AI for the non-technical part, like how do we use it? So let's summarize what you can actually do with that. Well, one of the most important ones is the extended market research. And you can use tools, or you can say stuff like, as a marketing strategist or as a marketing researcher, how would you do this? You can tell it to impersonate basically someone else and give you insights on how someone from the marketing industry would explain this to you or would pursue with that. And then you can also summarize like super long articles. You don't have to read papers that are like 5 pages long. Just figure out like what are the 10 points that, like 10 bullet points that I can figure out with that. So you can say like, summarize this paper for me on a bullet pointed with the most important information that I have to find. You will be amazed through how many articles for foldable phones I managed to get through within half an hour. I would still be probably the second one, if not the first one, without using the generative AI. Brainstorm. This was something very new for me. Like you can actually use it for brainstorming ideas. An example is brainstorm 20 ideas for adding social interactions to utility apps. Like how do you do that? Why would you do that? And it comes up with a fascinating list. Not all of them are like good enough, but that's why I said 20, because out of the 20, I actually had 4 that were perfect. Not just good, perfect. And then finally, explain the concepts in simple terms. So how would you explain what an API is to a 5-year-old? A problem that comes with seniority, after writing code for a while, some things that you just don't remember how you did them. And this is where the junior developers struggle to understand the seniors, and the seniors struggle to explain to the juniors. And this is, I think that, like, does anyone have the same problem? Ever had it? No? Just a few people, okay. So a big issue in a lot of companies, especially big companies that have a lot of junior developers, is that the senior will go to them and say like, okay, so take this part of code and do it. And the junior will be just stuck there and say like, okay, because you can't really say anything else, right? If it's your first day at job, you don't want to say like, no, I don't know how to do that. So they will struggle, and they will struggle a lot. And this is like half of the Stack Overflow posts that you will find. It's like junior developers really struggling to figure out what the hell is going on. And the same goes with presentations. A lot of times we go on stage and we say that it's a beginner's talk. And then beginners, like really beginners that started, let's say, the last year or so, you can see like the puppy eyes, like just about to cry, but not just yet. And you don't really know how to make this interesting for like all the levels of beginners, right? Because beginners are like someone that started yesterday and someone that has worked for it for, let's say, 2 or 3 years. They're still considered like juniors, right? So ChatGTP, how do you explain this? How would I explain this to my grandma? That. And then you can have that for like data presentation. And that was also very interesting. So I found this online, and I will read this. It says, the time it took for disruptive tech to hit 100 million users worldwide. So telephones, 75 years, mobile phones, 16 years, World Wide Web, 7 years, Facebook, 4.5, Instagram, 2.5, TikTok, 9 months, mind blown. ChatGPT 2 months. And then it has another very nice image at the bottom of it. And it says like ChatGPT 2 months, TikTok, and then it has Instagram and Uber, Google Translate, and some other apps over there. So the top one, for me, had the most interesting part, right? How long did it take to have 100 million users on Facebook or on the mobile phone, and how many months it took that to translate this to ChatGTP. So it was like, that would be a very nice chart instead of having like Google Translate over there, which I don't really care about. So I took this, and I went to this incredible, nice website. It's called ChatGTP. And I said, like, create a bar chart. Metric is going to be years. And then the data is telephone, 75, mobile, 16, World Wide Web, 7, Facebook, 4.5, Instagram, 2.5, TikTok, 0.75, ChatGPT, 0.16. And just with a button, just clicking that, it was already created. And I didn't have to go through Excels or like Word and put over there, or like Keynote is also trying to do some charts, but they're just not that easy. So you can actually also brand it as you wish. It has other, I use the bar chart, but like there are so many charts that you can use out there. And it's just as simple as that. So then you go to the illustrations. Especially for my slides, like every speaker has a distinctive, how do you say it, a distinctive like sense of presenting. For me, it's like using a lot of illustrations, a lot of images, a lot of whatever. I don't like text in my presentations. So this one that you saw before, I was trying to find like a cute elephant that it's going to hide, like the elephant in the room, right? So that was actually also created with AI. I just told them, like, create an elephant that's hiding behind a tree. That's what it came out. I was like, this is perfect, exactly what I need. Just put it over there. That was all. The tool is called the DAL-E, and you know that it's generative AI because they're, or at least this tool because they have this logo over there. So something that I always loved in presentations and I never had was videos. But if I would go to our designer and I would tell her like, hey, I want this awesome video that you can see like the sketch notes, and like it does this and it does that, and it's just going to back up whatever I say on the stage, and it's not really necessary, but really cool to have, and I really want to have it. She would be like, you want me to spend 5 hours of my life to create that video? Good luck saying that to my manager. And she would be like, both of them would be very like point taken, you know, it's, you don't spend 5 hours doing something for just one presentation. Most of the times I have like 2 or 3 within the month, just for creating nice to have videos. I don't blame them really. But then you can also have generative AI making this for you. And that was the first video I ever had in my slides. I was super happy with that. It was just showing like wireframes, and I was talking about wireframes, so that was just like a nice background to have, nothing too much. But there are so many tools out there that actually do generative AI videos. And I think that if you do have the time to just go there and like see what prompts work well and what prompts don't work that well, it can give you some fascinating examples of how you can use generative AI for having finally videos in your presentations. That, by the way, took less than 5 minutes to create. It was a single prompt. And finally, you have the research for other tools. This is also something that we saw before, like show me the best tools for marketing research that use generative AI. like top 5 tools for content writing that uses generative AI? Or are there tools for creating charts? Like, I didn't know how to create charts. So I was like, okay, so is there any tool that uses generative AI for that? And sure enough, I found one. So then we go to our technical part. And technical part, again, I mean code. So a lot of those presentations have code. Most of the code is just demo code, which means that it doesn't go into a project. So it means that basically you're just wasting like half of your day creating a demo app that will showcase exactly what you want to do for 3 minutes inside the presentation. And I found 2 tools that I really loved. Actually, I found one yesterday that it's just for creating tests, which I haven't used it yet, but there is such a tool just for creating tests. It's incredible. And then the 2 ones that I found out that, like for me, worked the best at least, was the first one is Codium, and it's an independent company, and the second one is the Copilot, and it's from GitHub. So I felt like, how do you say, brave enough to actually try to have a demo over here. Let's see how that goes. Can we? Okay. All right, just give us a second.
While we wait for that to queue up, I wonder, seeing as I think you almost described the perfect man with ChatGPT, how many, I had a discussion earlier on in the day with someone who's a specialist in AI, and they were saying that the big psychologists are worried that there's going to be people falling in love with ChatGPT. It's going to be the perfect partner.
So before actually going inside the presentation mode, something that unfortunately my IDE did not have was showing, oops, too much. So everything that it shows you, if it would move, okay. So you have this over here, and this you can actually say like, okay, so disable Codium or enable Codium, and the same goes with a Copilot over here. So either you enable the Copilot, the GitHub Copilot, or you disable it. So right now I have the Codium one enabled. We will try with this one first. Oops. Right? Is that visible? I think so. Okay, cool. So you're going to create a new file, like a Kotlin class file. So it's going to be a chat list. Cool. And then over here, you can just say like, what do you want to do? So I already have some comments over here. So composable chat list item with image name, last name modifier, click listener, stuff like this. And then it shows you the suggestion. So the first thing is the one that I typed is just a comment, and all the rest that it shows from my cursor down is basically each suggestion. And you can actually switch between suggestions. Right now it doesn't have another suggestion, but it creates a composable. Composable is just a UI element on Android. So it creates a chat list item. It has the image that I asked. It has the name, the last message that I asked, the modifier, and the click listener. So it basically has everything. You can see here that it's not really, not the whole code is there, but I think that this is like good enough. And then you just press tab, and then it just adds everything over here. Of course, not the imports. And then, so if I wanted over here to have like the, geez. So number 3, for instance, or number 2, would it be number 2? Damn it. Okay. This is going nuts. Okay, so I'll just do it manually. But let's say here that we just wanted like the list item and everything that we have over here. So what we would do is that I want a row. It's going to have the image. And that image is just going to be the image over here, content description, whatever. And then I want something else, so I want another row, or I want like a column inside the row that it's going to have. So you can see already here that it's giving you more suggestions. So it's giving you a text and another text. This is good enough. So if I import this, then you can see already that you have like your UI basically ready, and you didn't really have to deal with a lot of things. Like this was already done for you, and then for the rest again, you just fix some stuff as you go along, but basically that was all. And then if you want to say, let's say to have, here it says the preview, but let's say that you want to have like a list of that chat list, so you're going to get create a list with 10 chat list items, and it does create a chat list over here, and we see that it repeats for 10 times, and it does add this one, and this is basically done. So if you run this, it's just going to be the same thing that you would do if you would run all of this by yourself, if you would write it down by yourself. And if we switch to the Copilot, we will see that basically the results are almost the same. So you can see that if it's a demo app, for instance, or even if you want to build like some functions that are simple, and you could basically just create them with a comment in your code, that would be all. So go here. Okay. Do you see this? Yeah. Okay. So I won't show the Copilot because I'm running out of time. But the end point of that is that a shift is happening, and it depends on you if you're going to follow along, and if you are going to follow up on what's happening. For instance, we saw this change happening from AI to non-AI with the web as well, right? So ESOPs did replace a lot of the physical stores. Did it replace all of them? No, we still have physical stores. Did they change? Do they also have an ESOP? Yes, they did. The world is moving. So either you are moving with them, or the F gets removed. So thank you very much.
I don't know. Thank you. I think that probably one day we will be its pets, and it will take us out for an afternoon walk, perhaps an afternoon pee, because it will be doing everything for us. And we will become immensely lazy people. Imagination, I wrote it on my Facebook the other day, and I got quite a few likes because of it. Imagination is a muscle, and if we stop using that muscle, we will become very, very, very lazy and unimaginative people. It's a great tool. I am very worried. I'm not sure it was a wise decision to show it to my boy, but we'll see. Time will tell. Do we have any questions for that amazing talk? Any points of discussion? Something we should think about? Is anyone very worried? Is nobody worried? Here's your chance.
Oh, there is a hand over here.
There we are. We have one here. Good.
At what point this kind of technology will help a junior to learn, but also will be a barrier for them to say, okay, maybe developers are no longer that useful, I will look for another job, or a barrier for them in any other way to start doing this career?
I don't think the developers will ever be replaced. Our job will change for sure. It's exactly what happened with going from like the very low level coding to higher level classes, languages, right? So everything did change. You're not talking with 0 and 1s anymore. But are you obsolete? Absolutely not. You're actually more needed than ever. Are the developers that refuse to learn how to code in high languages, in high-end languages, obsolete? Absolutely. Like they can work in like maybe some like IoT or something like this. But for the rest, like who's going to use like assembly for creating something on like an app, for instance, or whatever. So I don't think that developers will ever be obsolete. They're going to be different. Obsolete? Not really.
Thank you, yes.
Yes. We have one more here.
Hello, I'm a lazy developer, and most of the times I don't want to make any documentation for my code. Do you know if this technology will help me to document my code in order to understand what I'm writing and do the lazy stuff?
Let me can I quickly, just before you answer that, all right? If you're a lazy developer and you ask it to document your code, are you not teaching it to, make you more lazy so that you can carry on eating pizza and drinking beer in front of Netflix? Right? Okay.
So first of all, that reminds me of something that Steve Jobs once, no, it was Bill Gates. He once said that if I can ever find 2 people to do the same job, I will always get the lazy one because he will find the fastest way to reach to the same result. So I don't think that laziness is actually like always a bad thing. Documentation, yes, should be there. Part of the laziness, I get it. We've all been there. Can you actually use generative AI for that? Absolutely. I think that there are tools already available that actually do create just the documentation by adding it to your IDE, just like the Copilot that we saw before. Those are just plugins. But also what you can do is that you can just copy paste the entire piece of code that you want, just put it in the ChatGTP and say like, hey, what is that doing? And then you will have basically your documentation because it will try to explain what that piece of code is doing.
Amazing. What a wonderful new world. We're in deep trouble, guys. All right. Okay, well, I don't think we have any more questions. That was a fantastic talk. Thank you so much.